Forget the postcard perfect fantasy of New Zealand you've been sold. It's not just a few backpackers deciding to move on. We're witnessing a historic and sustained exodus. The numbers are staggering, and they tell a hidden story. So why is everyone really leaving paradise? The myth we need to shatter right now is that this is about wanderlust. This isn't a generation casually seeking overseas experience. Here's the thing. People are fleeing a profound and systemic breakdown. They're voting with their feet, and the message is desperate. Imagine working full-time and still feeling like you're sinking. That's the daily reality for thousands of Kiwis. But wait, if it's so beautiful, what's the real problem? Let's peel back the glossy tourism brochure. The first crack in the foundation is something you feel every single day. It hits your wallet the moment you open your eyes. The cost of living here isn't just high, it's surreal. And we're talking about a remote island nation that imports almost everything. Have you ever paid $8 for a limp head of lettuce? Or felt your heart stop at a $70 gas bill for a small car? Everything from a basic pair of socks to a car part carries a tyranny of distance. Tax. But here's the thing. Salaries have not kept pace, not even close. Wages here are stagnant in a global context. Why would a skilled engineer stay for half the pay they'd get in Australia? The dream of owning a home has evaporated for an entire generation. And we're not just talking about Auckland anymore. This housing crisis has spread to every decent-sized town. You see, the great New Zealand dream has been flipped on its head. Renting is a brutal, insecure, and expensive nightmare. But wait, isn't New Zealand supposed to be the lucky country? What happens when the luck runs out? We need to talk about what this daily grind does to the human spirit. It creates a slow-burn anxiety that never turns off. You're constantly calculating, robbing Peter to pay Paul. The stress of mere survival eclipses the beauty of the mountains. Can a view of the ocean really feed your family? So the initial draw of higher wages overseas is obvious, but it's so much deeper than a simple paycheck. This is about a loss of faith in the future. It's about looking at your children and wondering if they'll ever have a stake here. Parents are leaving to give their kids a chance at something normal. They're trading the cathedral-like beaches for suburban stability abroad. Does that sound like an easy choice to make? Here's the thing. This outbound flow is a brain drain of epic proportions. We're losing our nurses, our teachers, our builders, our tech talent. These aren't just statistics. They are the glue holding society together. Every plane out is taking a piece of the country's heart and capability. And what's left behind? A society stretched thinner, trying to function with gaping holes. The remaining people face longer hospital wait times and crumbling infrastructure. So the pressure builds on those who stay, pushing more to consider leaving. It's a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle. But this is only the surface layer of the problem. The cost of living is just the first domino to fall. Now, let's zoom in on the housing market, the true epicenter of the crisis. This isn't about a simple shortage of buildings. It's about a market that became a global casino for wealth preservation. Here's the thing. New Zealand housing transformed from a home into a speculative asset class. International and domestic investors poured money into residential real estate. But wait, didn't the government try to stop this? Foreign buyer bans were implemented, but the damage was already deeply entrenched. The existing housing stock was already locked up in a system designed for gain, not shelter. So what does this mean for the average person trying to rent or buy? Imagine a country where the price-to-income ratio is among the worst in the developed world. We're talking about needing 10 or 12 times the median income to buy a median house. How can a young couple possibly save a deposit when rent consumes half their income? They are competing against landlords with decades of equity behind them. Every price hike at the supermarket makes that savings goal recede even further. Have you ever felt like you're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up? That's the New Zealand property dream for anyone under 40. And the rental market offers no refuge. It's insecure, expensive, and often in poor condition. Here's the thing. Tenants have very few rights compared to other nations. No-cause evictions were only recently banned, creating a legacy of fear. Why invest emotionally in a community when you can be told to leave in 90 days? You can be a perfect tenant and still lose your home because the owner wants to sell. So you live with a low-grade hum of uncertainty, always in the background. But wait, what about just moving to a cheaper region? That's the great Kiwi myth of internal salvation. The crisis has gone viral, spreading to every desirable region. The moment a town gets a reputation for being affordable, it gets flooded. Prices in former sleepy coastal villages have skyrocketed. Remote work brought city money and expectations to the countryside. Now the locals who serve the community can't afford to live in it. The teacher, the cafe worker, the nurse get priced out of their own hometowns. Does that sound like a sustainable way to run a country? This housing disaster directly fuels the second major driver of the exodus: pathetic wages. New Zealand has a productivity problem that's decades in the making. Here's the thing. We're a nation of small businesses competing on low margins. The easy answer has always been to suppress wages instead of innovating. Why invest in expensive technology when labor has been cheap? But that model collapses when your skilled labor can hop a plane to Sydney. Now, employers are caught between a rock and a hard place. They can't afford to pay global salaries, but they can't find staff either. So what happens to those businesses? They reduce hours, limit services, or simply close down. Have you noticed how everything seems to be understaffed or closed randomly? This isn't just an inconvenience, it's a symptom of economic failure. The feeling of things getting worse, not better, becomes pervasive. You start to wonder if the engine of the country is sputtering out. And for the ambitious and skilled, that wonder turns into a decision. They look at the equation. Insane costs. Plus low wages triggers no future. The math is brutally simple, and it only has one logical solution. You leave. You go where your work is valued and rewarded. You trade the $1 million damp shack for a real house with a backyard. But this financial pressure cooker is creating a social toll we haven't even discussed yet. The constant strain is fracturing something fundamental in the Kiwi spirit. Let's talk about that fractured spirit, the social toll that money can't measure. Here's the thing. New Zealand has a severe grinding infrastructure deficit. It's not just potholes. It's a country operating on systems from the last century. The public hospitals are in a state of perpetual crisis, with hallways lined with patients. But wait, isn't healthcare supposed to be free? It is. But free means waiting years for a crucial surgery or a specialist appointment. Have you ever been told your painful condition isn't urgent enough while your life is on hold? The mental health care system is even more broken, with waitlists that are effectively a denial of service. So where does that leave people? It leaves them suffering in silence or draining their life savings to go private. And what about the roads clogged with traffic because public transport is a joke in most cities? The trains are slow, unreliable, and don't go where people need them to go. You spend hours of your life unpaid, just commuting to a job that doesn't pay enough. Why fight that daily battle when other cities have efficient metros and buses that run on time? This decay creates a background mood of frustration and resignation. It feels like the country is slowly falling apart while everyone just argues about it. Here's the thing. This leads to a deep and unsettling sense of decline. People remember when things worked better or they hear the stories from their parents. There's a palpable grief for a country that seems to be slipping away. But wait, isn't New Zealand famously safe and low crime? That myth is shattering faster than a car window in central Auckland. Ramped up gang activity and brazen retail crime are now daily news fodder. It's not just perception. The statistics show a worrying trend, especially for a nation this size. Why tolerate a growing sense of lawlessness when you move to the regions for safety? Parents don't feel good letting their kids walk to the park anymore. Small business owners are being terrorized by smash and grab raids. The social contract, that feeling of mutual trust and safety, is wearing thin. And into this void steps a toxic and exhausting culture war. New Zealand's famous vibe of easygoing mateship is under strain. Social media and certain media outlets amplify every division, every grievance. Debates over co-governance, gender, and history have turned vicious and personal. Have you ever felt you had to walk on eggshells just to have a normal conversation? It's exhausting to see your homeland, your community, constantly bickering over foundational issues. Here's the thing. When you're struggling to pay bills, this noise feels like a cruel distraction. People are too tired for ideological battles. They just want a functioning society. They crave normalcy, competence, and a sense of common purpose. But that feels in short supply, replaced by a loud performative politics. So, what's the emotional result of all this? It's a profound sense of isolation, even in a crowd. You feel isolated from the dream you were sold, isolated by financial stress, isolated by polarizing debates. The famous number 8 wire ingenuity turns into number 8 wire exhaustion. You're just constantly fixing, patching, and making do in your own life, and you see the country doing the same. And for many, the most isolating thought is this. Maybe it's just me. Maybe they're the failure for not keeping up. But then they look at the airport departure boards and see the lines. They talk to friends who've left and hear a surprising thing. Relief. Not just financial relief, but a relief from the grind, from the anxiety, from the weight. That conversation, that testimony from a friend overseas is the final push. It makes the unthinkable, leaving paradise, suddenly seem not just logical, but necessary. And this brings us to the most powerful magnet pulling people away. That magnet is Australia. Here's the thing. It's not just another country. It's the glaring, sunny alternative next door. It's the constant, tempting comparison that makes New Zealand's failures feel so acute. Australians call it the brain drain, but for Kiwis, it's just crossing the ditch for a fair go. But wait, isn't Australia just a hotter, drier version of the same thing? Not even close. The wage gap is the single most powerful economic fact driving families onto those plains. We're talking about the same job paying 30, 40, even 50% more. Why would a qualified teacher or a police officer stay here and struggle? In Australia, they can actually envision buying a home, saving for vacations, building wealth. It's not about getting rich. It's about achieving a stable, middle-class life that's vanished at home. Have you ever done the side-by-side comparison of grocery bills or utility costs? It's a gut punch that turns into a plan. Here's the thing. Australia didn't just get lucky with minerals. It built a more diversified, productive, and frankly, more ambitious economy. Their cities function with better infrastructure, more competitive retail, and a wider range of opportunities. The scale alone means more career paths, more innovation, more buzz. For young professionals in tech or finance, Auckland feels like a provincial backwater. Can you blame them for wanting a seat at the big table? But it's more than money and career. It's about a shift in mindset from scarcity to possibility. In New Zealand, the conversation is often about managing decline, about what we can't have. In Australia, the tone is still broadly about growth and opportunity. That psychological difference is massive for morale. And then there's the sun. It seems trivial, but it's not. Winters in much of New Zealand are damp, dark, and expensive to heat. That gray, chilly gloom seeps into your bones and your wallet. Contrast that with the Queensland sun or even a milder Melbourne winter. Outdoor living, lower heating bills, a generally more optimistic climate. It all adds up. Why battle seasonal affective disorder when you can have vitamin D for free? But here's the thing. Australia actively rolls out the red carpet. Their skilled migration programs are aggressive and streamlined. They need workers, and they make the process comparatively easy for Kiwis. New Zealand citizens get special visa status, can access many social services, and can stay indefinitely. It's the easiest major move a person can make. So the barrier to exit is incredibly low, while the barrier to a good life at home is incredibly high. What would you choose? The pull is compounded by the established communities of Kiwis already over there. You land in Brisbane or Perth or Melbourne, and there's a ready-made support network. Your kids go to schools with other Kiwi kids. You can find your favorite snacks. The transition isn't a lonely leap into the unknown, it's joining a well-trodden path. This creates a snowball effect that's now a defining feature of New Zealand life. Every family has a sibling, a cousin, a best friend already in Australia. Their success stories are the most effective recruitment tool imaginable. They post photos of their backyard pool, their new car, their weekend getaway. It's not bragging, it's just a different reality. And every photo is a quiet question. Why are you still there? That question echoes in the minds of those left behind, fueling the next wave of departures. But this isn't just about individuals making rational choices anymore. The scale of this departure is triggering a national identity crisis. This national identity crisis is the silent undercurrent of the exodus. Here's the thing. New Zealand built its modern myth on being the better, saner alternative. We were the clean, green, egalitarian refuge at the bottom of the world. That story is now colliding with a harsh reality of inequality and struggle. But wait, hasn't the government announced new policies to fix things? They try, but the fixes feel like small band-aids on a gaping wound. There's a pervasive sense of political paralysis, of short-term thinking. Every 3-year election cycle brings new promises, but the core issues remain, growing worse. Why does it feel like no one in power can actually solve the problems? It erodes trust in the very institutions meant to hold society together. Here's the thing. The people leaving are often the very ones the country needs most to fix it. They're the pragmatic doers, the builders, the critical thinkers, without a political axe to grind. Their departure doesn't just create a skills gap, it creates a civic energy deficit. The people left are often those who can't leave, or the deeply ideological on all sides. This makes the national conversation poor, more extreme, and less solution-oriented. Have you noticed how debate gets louder yet less substantive? It's a feedback loop of decline. And into this void steps a deep loneliness, even for those in beautiful places. You can be surrounded by breathtaking scenery and feel utterly disconnected. The community fabric, the moray spirit of collective care, is fraying under economic pressure. Everyone is too busy working multiple jobs or side hustles to have time for community. What good is a world-class landscape if you have no one to enjoy it with or no time to see it? The famous Kiwi ingenuity is now directed at personal survival, not communal betterment. Here's the thing. This is creating two New Zealands. There's the one for the asset-rich, the comfortable retiree, the remote worker with foreign currency. They enjoy the beauty insulated from the daily grind. And then there's the New Zealand for the wage earner, the young family, the essential worker. They experience a completely different country of stress, limitation, and doubt. The shared sense of a common lot, so key to the national character, is dissolving. But wait, what about the promise of a better work-life balance? That was the last card New Zealand had to play. Now people are working longer hours than ever just to stand still. Where's the balance in a 2-hour commute to an unaffordable city? The dream of a quarter-acre section with a BBQ has been replaced by a shared rental with mold. So the very marketing that brought people here is now a cruel joke on the residents. The disconnect between brand and reality has never been wider, and this fuels a specific kind of resentment in those who stay. It's not just anger at the situation, it's a heartbreak for the lost promise. You hear it in the pubs and around the dinner tables. This isn't the New Zealand I grew up in. It's a mourning for a future that was supposed to be guaranteed. For the young, it's a mourning for a future they'll never even get to try. Why would you fight for a stake in a game that feels rigged against you from the start? This emotional toll is the final ingredient in the decision to leave. It's not a spreadsheet calculation anymore. It's an act of self-preservation. Leaving becomes an affirmative choice for a future, not just a rejection of a present. They aren't just running from something. They are, in their minds, running to a chance. They are reclaiming agency over their own lives. And with every departure, the country's ability to reverse this cycle weakens. We are now at the tipping point where the exodus itself is becoming the primary problem. But to truly understand the endgame, we need to look at who is coming in to replace those leaving. The story isn't just about who's going out the door. It's also about who's coming in and what that means for the soul of the nation. So, who is replacing the Kiwis who are leaving? Here's the thing. The net migration numbers might still look positive, but that's a statistical illusion. The people arriving are fundamentally different from the people departing. We're losing skilled mid-career New Zealanders with deep roots and a lifetime of local knowledge. And who are we getting in return? We're getting international students, temporary migrant workers on specific visas, and a wave of affluent retirees. But wait, doesn't that bring new money and diversity? It does, but it doesn't fill the gaping holes in our society's foundation. A wealthy retiree doesn't staff an ICU ward or teach a fifth-grade class. A student on a temporary visa doesn't build houses or fix our aging pipes. This is a profound swap of human capital, and we're trading down. Have you ever tried to get a plumber or an electrician lately? The wait times tell you everything about this imbalance. Here's the thing. This shift is changing the social and economic fabric in subtle, profound ways. The new arrivals often come with wealth, which further inflates local asset prices without boosting local productivity. They aren't integrated into the wage economy that's struggling to function. So the disconnect between the asset-rich and the wage-poor grows even wider. And what about the temporary workers? They are frequently exploited, living in crowded conditions, afraid to speak up. They fill crucial gaps in hospitality, agriculture, and healthcare, but they have no pathway to permanence. They are a transient workforce, not future citizens building a life here. Why would they invest in a community that sees them as a temporary solution? This creates a two-tiered society, a feeling of transience that undermines social cohesion. The long white cloud is starting to feel like a temporary stopover, not a forever home. But the most poignant question is this. What happens to a nation's soul when its own children leave? The shared memories, the cultural shorthand, the collective history, it dilutes. Anzac Day, the local rugby club, the way we understand a Bach or a Sangha, these things fade. They become museum pieces rather than living traditions. Here's the thing. A country is more than an economy and a landscape. It's a shared story. And right now, the authors of the next chapters are increasingly deciding to write them elsewhere. So, is this the end of the New Zealand dream? It might be the end of the old one, the passive paradise myth. The reality is that New Zealand is at a crossroads, forced into a brutal audit. It can no longer rely on beauty and a she'll be right attitude to retain its people. The global market for talent is fierce and loyalty is earned, not inherited. But wait, could there be a reversal? It's possible, but it would require a radical collective shift in priorities. It would mean valuing teachers as much as property investors. It would mean taxing wealth, not just income, to rebalance the scales. It would require building dense, affordable cities with real public transport. It would mean paying what it truly costs to live here and not expecting the workers to subsidize it with their suffering. That is a monumental political and social challenge. For now, the planes keep taking off. The families keep packing, hearts full of grief and hope. They look down one last time at the stunning, jagged coastline disappearing beneath the clouds. They aren't just leaving a place, they are leaving a version of themselves, or what could have been. And New Zealand is left behind, breathtakingly beautiful, and wondering what it will become without them. The exodus isn't just a population trend. It's the clearest referendum ever held on the state of the nation, and the votes, cast with one-way tickets, are still being counted.